The 49ers wrapped up their fourth day of training camp, coming off a disappointing end to their postseason in the 2022 season, where Brock Purdy went down in the NFC title game, basically sealing their fate against the Eagles with a loss. But Purdy is healthy now. And for more on Brock Purdy and the 49ers, we bring in our CBS Sports senior NFL reporter, Jonathan Jones from Santa Clara, California, where the 49ers are holding training camp. And Jonathan, Purdy had a scheduled off day on Sunday, but how is he making progress, really immersing himself back into the fold after that injury?
Yeah, a scheduled off day today for Brock Purdy because they don't want him practicing 3 days in a row. And so they have practices the next 2 days. And so they said, all right, we're going to have you chill out today, even though yesterday they did have off. All of the players did. So what is he doing? Look, he's ramping up in terms of volume. He has felt really good throwing the football, letting it rip. He has no limitations as it relates to that. Kyle Shanahan has said there are no restrictions for Brock Purdy, but there is some restriction, right? And that is sort of a pitch count. And so they're not trying to overwork him right now. They are just trying to ramp him up and do what's right, because obviously he is QB1 for this team. So Brock Purdy will be out of practice tomorrow. He'll be out of practice the next day. He's going to continue to work on his timing with the wide receivers out here, knock off some of the rust, as he talked about earlier in the week. But he's happy. He's in good spirits. I spoke with him very, very briefly as we passed by. And look, I don't think that there's anything for 49ers fans to worry about with him moving forward.
Yeah, it's great news for the 49ers fans, as he had one terrific season, coming up as a third QB off the roster. Now, the 49ers defense, Jonathan, seemed poised to be a generational unit again after having the #1 defense last season led by Nick Bosa. We'll get to him in a minute, Arik Armstead and Fred Warner. I know you spoke to the All-Pro Warner. What are they going to cook up to maintain that elite level?
Fred Warner said something really interesting where he's like, it's kind of playing with a Pro Bowl defense every day at practice. And, frankly, he's right. Defensive coordinator Steve Wilks, who's new here, of course, D'Amico Ryans was the DC before he went to the Houston Texans. Wilks said, I've never really been around a group that is this talented, this deep. And he's been with some great defenses. Of course, he was there with the 2015 Carolina Panthers that went 15-1. And so you look at this defense, and at every level, you have Nick Bosa, first-team All-Pro, there up front. And, of course, Arik Armstead, who's going to be working on the interior. Of course, they went out in free agency and got Javon Kinlaw, who's been a little disappointing in his early career. He looks fantastic, very svelte and in shape. You go to the second level of the defense, and Fred Warner, who may be the best inside linebacker in all of football. He's paired with Dre Greenlaw, of course, and then in the back end with Hufanga, one of a very underrated safety. This is an incredible group. We were just with the Los Angeles Rams, who I think a casual NFL fan is going to have a very difficult time naming, outside of Aaron Donald, a starting defensive player for the Rams. I think a casual NFL fan can probably start with at least half of this 49ers defense that promises, or at least hopes to be back at the top of the NFL in 2023.
I'm sure offenses are going to have fits trying to game plan for them week in and week out. And I'm sure you know this, but the 49ers haven't had a Pro Bowl QB since 2002 when Jeff Garcia was a QB. That hasn't stopped them, though, from making the NFC title game 3 of the last 4 years, just the third team in NFL history to do so in a 4-year span. But they haven't been able to hoist that Lombardi trophy yet. So what do they need to do, man, to get over that hump?
It's interesting, Chris, because, and I asked George Kittle this, it was a little bit of a philosophical question. Do you have to get over a hump? Is there actually a hump? Because break it down, right? I mean, in the Super Bowl against the Chiefs, this was a team that was up 10 points in the fourth quarter. You consider against the Rams in the NFC title game, if that interception is caught, that Matt Stafford surely threw, the Rams are not going to the Super Bowl. You have the San Francisco 49ers going and playing, the Cincinnati Bengals. And then, of course, last year, if you don't have a position catastrophe at the one position that you absolutely cannot have a position catastrophe at, like they did at quarterback, then maybe that's a different game against the Philadelphia Eagles. And so is there a hump, right? I don't know that that's necessarily the case for this team. They know, Chris, that they are a really, really good football team. When you consider the fact that they had 3 all-pros on that defense, and they're not going to miss a beat. When you consider what they have on the offensive side of the football, there are guys, you can make a legitimate conversation or discussion that Trent Williams is the best left tackle in the game, that Bosa is the best pass rusher in the game, that Fred Warner is the best linebacker in the game. Like, that's just starting out. And so this is a team that they know on paper they are very good. They have back-to-back 12-win seasons. They're not shy about saying that, but they're not saying it in any sort of braggadocious way. They're just saying it because facts are facts.
Yeah, and they believe in it. I don't blame them at all. Now, we talked about Brock earlier, but what did you see from the QBs practicing on Sunday, specifically Trey Lance and Sam Darnold, who have been splitting the second-team reps to start camp?
You know, Chris, I don't like to work in the hot take artistry. I like to be level-headed with my analysis. I also believe that as a national reporter who comes and parachutes into a camp, you can't take too much from an hour and a half of practice that you saw. Maybe somebody had a bad day. That doesn't mean that they're going to have a bad season. Maybe they had a great day. Doesn't mean the opposite either. Trey Lance, he wasn't very good today. And was that because Brandon Allen, the fourth-string quarterback, stood out in his 2 or 3 reps per period? Yeah, Sam Darnold, in talking with a source, told me that he actually had his best day at practice earlier today. It did help that he was able to hook up with Brandon Ayuk many times at practice. This had to be Ayuk's best training camp practice so far, and I heard a lot of very good returns on him. So, look, Trey Lance, if you want to call him the third best or the third worst quarterback out there today, it was really more about what the other guys did. But in talking with a high-level source here just a little bit ago, they say, look, Trey's actually had a pretty good camp. He's had a much better camp than he had last year. He worked this offseason on his mechanics with a private quarterback coach. He was focused a lot on his footwork. You can see the difference in his throwing mechanics. I was out here about this time last year, and it was a little funky release. You can tell that he has gotten new mechanics there, and so the 49ers feel like it's a good problem to have, that when Brock Purdy is back at full go with absolutely zero restrictions, again, we talk about that sort of pitch count, right, that they don't want to be in the position to have another position catastrophe. So are they going to carry 4 quarterbacks on the active roster? No, they are not. But is this a team that the past couple of years with Kyle Shanahan has carried 2 quarterbacks on the active roster that may go to 3? I absolutely would be penciling, perhaps even sharpieing that in for the 49ers as you build their 53-man roster, because they are not wanting to be in the same spot they were in the NFC title game.
Definitely not, but Trey Lance will have to be ready if something does happen to Brock Purdy. Now, one guy not at camp is last year's Defensive Player of the Year, Nick Bosa. He led the league in sacks last year in 18.5, but is holding out because he's on the last year of a very team-friendly rookie deal and wants a much fatter salary. How long do you expect this to last, and what are you hearing from the 49ers side?
You know, Chris, I am not anticipating that anything is going to be done. We're not going to, when we're done with this segment, wait up because Nick Bosa may sign with the 49ers. I think we can all stand down on that on this beautiful Sunday out here in the Bay. But I do believe, and the 49ers, I believe that he is going to be signing with the team, and he will very likely be the highest paid edge rusher in NFL history. Now, is he going to surpass Aaron Donald's number of $31+ million in average annual salary? I don't know that that is the case. And so, obviously, there are some hang-ups with the contract. John Lynch, the general manager here, he talked recently with media about how there are certain nuances with this contract. But suffice it to say, it's a very big number, that the 49ers are ultimately going to pay it, that he's going to come into training camp, and look, he stays in incredible shape, so the Niners aren't really worried about him holding out right now, even though it is very strange for the Niners to experience a holdout. They take care of their guys over here. He's going to be paid. He's going to be paid as the highest edge rusher in NFL history, and he will be out there week 1. It's just a matter of when, but really, there's not a lot of stress I'm hearing from anyone here about Bosa and his contract. It's going to get done. So
49ers fans, you can relax. Bosa, 24th highest salary for an edge rusher right now, but as Jonathan pointed out, it's probably going to get done, and nothing's going to be, everything's going to be fine. Jonathan Jones, thanks so much for the time, man. All right, so if you look at the 49ers, who have won Defensive Player of the Year, you got 3 of them. Nick Bosa last year, as we just talked about, Dana Stubblefield, blast from the past a little bit, in 1997, and then prime time, Deion Sanders in 1994. Great defensive players right there.